Hello everyone, my name is the Mad Scorpion, and I wanted to take this video to talk about the Nightfall selection in Destiny 2, and how it just kind of feels bland, boring, and I want to say more heavily cited to be the more difficult of Nightfalls. For some reason, Bungie just letting all of the easier ones either not stay easy, or just, straight not show up ever again. So to go over that, let me talk about the current list of Nightfalls and their associate factions that are present that might contribute as to why it feels a little more bland or boring. So at current from top to bottom, we have the Hypernet Current, which is comprised of Vex, Shadow Legion Cabal, and a Taken section with a Taken final boss. The Heist Battlegrounds of Mars, which is almost exclusively Hive. The Psyops Battleground Cosmodrome, which is a little bit of Fallen at the beginning, the rest being all Lucent Hive. The Psyops Battleground of the Moon, which is entirely Lucent Hive. The Lake of Shadows, which is largely Shadow Legion Cabal as well as Taken. The Scarlet Keep, which again, full Hive, thankfully not Lucent. The Insight Terminus, which is partway as Vex and also Cabal. Then the Ward of Nothing, which is also Vex and Cabal. So for the faction tally right now, there is 2 that have Taken present, 4 that have Hive present, not to mention Lucent Hive, 3 that are Vex, 4 that are Cabal, and 1 section of Fallen. Now, looking at that as a grand scheme, it might contribute to the fact that Fallen may be an easier faction to fight in the Nightfall scenario, but at the same time, it just seems constantly that we are being put into strikes that are forced to be updated just because Bungie said, this is getting too easy, so we need to make it hard just because we need to make it hard. Now, prospectively looking at it, in terms of what we have available for the starter person just getting into Nightfalls, and especially Grandmaster Nightfalls, I might say, I would rate the Insight Terminus as maybe a medium difficulty. Same thing with Warden of Nothing, medium difficulty. There are moments that you have to focus up, but aside from that, the hardest part would be the final boss just because it is an open arena that doesn't have many places to hide and you are constantly being hounded by ads. In that same perspective, those 2 strikes I would say are the easy ones for this season. The ones that if you need to farm out materials, then this is the strike to go for because it would be easier. Same is to be said of the Scarlet Keep and even the Hypernet Current, a strike that came out with Lightfall. That one is one that I would say, if you're looking for a week to farm out, go for that one because you would have a far more consistent time getting completions down than if you went after anything else. Because with the Heist Battleground of Mars, at least in terms of that, there is a few sections you have to hold out from kind of insurmountable odds if you don't have a team that is specifically set up to hold out Wells, Ward of Dawns, full suppression tether, that sort of deal. But then you get the Psyops Battlegrounds, and considering the fact that they're almost all Lucent Hive, there is several places that when dealing with a Hive Guardian that you have to just hammer it down because if you mess up a little bit, you are wiped. It only takes 1 bad shield bounce, 1 unique spray of blades from a hunter. There's just several things that when fighting Lucent Hive, it can wipe you out in an instant. Not to mention, with the exclusivity of the Psyops Battlegrounds, during the final boss, when you hit 1/3 health and 2/3 health of the final boss, which, again, will also be Lucent Hive, you have to deal with aspects of Savathûn, which have to be dealt with those Synaptic Spears, and in this scenario, I feel like are 3 times more tanky than the average version, because I think in the normal strike, you could just use 1 Synaptic Spear to deal with the aspect of Savathûn. If not deal with it, get close to finishing it off. But in terms of Grandmasters, I feel like you need 3 or 4 per person to deal with it. Then, at that point, it just feels like there is way more strikes that are the harder variety than other weeks or other seasons would suggest. In past seasons, you maybe would get a Light Blade and a Glassway, but then those would be the 2 difficult ones, and then we maybe get Insight Terminus and Warden, but then we might get Inverted Spire and Fallen Saber. There was usually a mix-up of, hey, we have 2 really easy ones, we have 2 not-so-easy ones, and here are some that are the difficult ones, maybe not the best weeks to farm if you are not so adeptly skilled. And from that perspective, I also want to look back at the strikes of or should I say, old strikes of past, to understand how much we have lost or how much things have changed since before, and why Nightfalls just feel a bit more bland nowadays compared to their original versions. So starting off from the very start of the Destiny timeline, in vanilla Destiny we had the Arms Dealer, which was updated come the year of Nightfall, as well as the Lake of Shadows, which I believe was also recently updated with the year of Nightfall as well, all brought forward to feature current enemies and updated health pools, so they weren't exactly easy compared to their original versions. And we also have the Savathûn Song Strike, which as of current is still vaulted, then the Exodus Crash, which was also updated come Echoes, although to be fair, in terms of Exodus Crash, this one was updated and almost made easier because the final boss at least stuck around way more than it did before. Then from there's the Inverted Spire, which was updated, I forget between Echoes or Revenant, it was updated at one of those 2 times, which, again, this update, it didn't make it feel more difficult, it just kind of made it seem current, if that makes sense. And then lastly, with the Vanilla Strikes, we have the Pyramidion, which has stayed vaulted. Now, in perspective, in terms of the vaulted strikes, I want to keep an eye on things like Warden of Nothing, because prospectively, Warden of Nothing was always in a unique space. Even though it was Tangled Shore, it was kept around even during the time that Tangled Shore was vaulted, because it was an exclusive area. Now, just to keep in mind, the Vault of Glass on Venus, it is in a planet that we cannot access. When we drop in, it is in a patrol space, but in terms of going to either direction towards other destinations, there are immediate invisible walls that spawn in that prevent you from going onward. I know in terms of something like Savathûn Song and the Pyramidion, they spawn in patrol spaces, but what is to keep Bungie from just putting those brick walls in the spaces that lead to other areas, and just saying, hey, here you go, you have your strike, run it start to finish, and you're done being on this planet. They've been teasing more and more about returning little locations, like with the current Court of Blades offering a glimpse into Io, and the other season where we went to Titan, just not areas we had been before. They've been teasing the idea of returning these spaces. I know the Red War campaign is not coming back, but some of these things could feasibly make it back pretty easily, as long as they just keep in mind to not open it as a patrol space, hammer off some walls, and then we'll be fine. Moving on forward, we have with the Curse of Osiris DLC, we had the Tree of Probabilities and the Garden World Strikes. Both of those have been vaulted come Beyond Light, and I doubt we will see much more of them in the future, considering just we seem to not see them that often. Then with Warmind, there was also the Strange Terrain Strike of Nokris, the Will of the Thousands with Zol, and the Insight Terminus, which in terms of Nokris and Zol, those have both been vaulted, and the Insight Terminus has been in an odd state where it's just kind of stayed as it was. It hasn't been updated, it hasn't been changed. It's kind of in a perfect middle ground of efficacy in terms of being a difficult strike. Then we get into the first DLC of the new year. In Forsaken, we got a handy number. The Ward of Nothing is still original and sort of updated, I forget officially. Then the Broodhold was vaulted, the Hollowed Lair is in an odd state of limbo, and the Corrupted is as it was before. Now to describe the Hollowed Lair as its limbo, it only showed up ever in the Grandmaster tier list once, and has only been a Nightfall in the current age once. It was incredibly difficult, or I should say fickle, in terms of being a strike. I think it was one of the record least completed in terms of completing Grandmasters. But at the same time, it hasn't been back, and they haven't said it's not coming back, so it's in a weird state of limbo where it could come back, but we don't know. Then with Shadowkeep, we had the Scarlet Keep, which has been introduced semi-recently. I want to say it was like year 5 of Destiny we got it in the Nightfall list, and it has been kept pretty original, aside from fixing some glitch spots. And the Festering Core, which was on Io, so again, vaulted. Now after this point, everything that has been introduced has stayed. Nothing has been changed, adjusted, or anything else. So we had, for Beyond Light, the Glassway, the Disgraced, the Devil's Lair, Fallen Saber, and with Season of the Chosen, we got the Proving Ground Strike. All of those are still current in the game. None of them have been updated or changed. They are as they were. Same with the Witch Queen strikes of the Lightblade and the Birthplace of the Vial, with Lightfall, the Hypernet Current, as well as the Final Shape getting Liminality. All of those strikes were introduced and have stayed the course. They haven't been changed because they kind of been introduced into a modern sandbox, so they don't really need adjustments or tuning because they are current in the sandbox, if that makes sense. Now, after those strikes, sometime in those many years, they decided to introduce Battlegrounds into the Nightfall list, so we had all the Battlegrounds from Season of the Chosen that have recently made an appearance. They have regularly introduced the Heist Battlegrounds from Season of the Seraph, and they have recently seemed to become favorable in terms of introducing Psyops Battlegrounds into the rotation. As there was a Psyops Battlegrounds, I want to say, during Season of Echoes, and there is 2 Psyops Battlegrounds that are present during the current season of Heresy. Now, looking at that list, how many things have been vaulted, how many things have been updated, and how many things have stayed the same, frankly, I feel like is a contribution to why it feels like the Nightfalls, at least what is available, have gone down in quality. Because looking back at, like I've said with our current availability, there isn't the fine line of, I would say, these are easy ones, these are not so easy, partially difficult ones, and these are the ones that you will need to lock the F in if you want to get done. There isn't really that line, because right now it's either these are not so difficult, or these ones you need to lock the F in, otherwise you are failing or restarting several times. So, a solution to this issue, honestly, I hate that they expanded it from 6 strikes to 8 strikes. I don't know why they did it. I get episodes are longer, so you need more strikes, more content, air quotes. But the amount of Nightfalls doesn't really match, considering there's still only 6 weapons, I believe. So at this point, the rotation is just kind of screwy. You can't match a weapon to a strike anymore. And in that same perspective, like I mentioned with the vaulted content, you could easily restore this, or restore these strikes, because sure, I guess the issue could be they spawn in patrol zones of vaulted locations, but do like you did with the Vault of Glass. Make a location, sever it off from the rest of the world, and then just have the strike. Make it a funnel. Go straight into the strike. Hammer off any walls that would lead into alternate locations. And you could easily restore a bunch of these strikes. Honestly, at this point, with the lack of new strikes that we seem to be getting, considering, looking back at the list, we had 4 strikes for Forsaken, 5 strikes for Beyond Light, and we got 1 for Lightfall and 1 for Final Shape. I get the Battlegrounds are a thing, but even still, the new Battlegrounds from Echoes, those haven't been made into the Nightfall list. Anything past Season of the Seraph, the last 2 or 3 years, if there is a Battlegrounds, they have not been added into the active rotation for Grandmasters. Even more contributing to the lack of, I'd say, variety. Because, again, if we see a Battlegrounds, it's almost always been Heist Battlegrounds. And recently, we've been getting a lot of the Psyops Battlegrounds. And I think in terms of the old Battlegrounds from the Season of the Chosen that was exclusively Cabal, I think we got them maybe twice total since they were introduced, or Battlegrounds have been introduced into the Nightfall list. So honestly, I just feel like the Nightfall variety needs a shakeup. It needs some either more traditional easy, medium difficulty spread variety, or it just needs to get more into it. And honestly, I feel like in terms of some weeks, you could even reinstitute the old versions of some strikes, because the Arms Dealer, it wasn't exactly an easy one originally. The ending fight was still a bit of a hectic one, so you could easily have the old version and new version, which may cause some difficulties, but you hear what I'm saying. You don't have to make it so there is a new version and the old version is no longer accessible, because honestly, if you had more than one version, that would include the variety. So if you want to pep up the list, maybe these are some ideas you can start working on, Bungie, to make the list interesting, because in full variety, or full honesty, this is a season I debated not doing Conqueror this season, because it has been a 13 season streak, and I thought about giving up on it just because I hate the current available list of strikes. They just don't look fun, they seem overly challenging, and aside from that, again, the fire for Destiny is kind of out for me right now. I do still make the content, I still make the videos, but I'm playing a lot of other games right now. Usually the Conqueror strikes were the reason I played Destiny still. But right now, aside from cleaning out some of the easy ones right now, I don't think I'm going to be doing any of the more difficult ones, personally. With that, that is kind of a small rant video, discussion video, however you want to put it. But with that, my name is the Mad Scorpion. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to contribute to the conversation, put any other solutions, the comments are always welcome down below. And I will see you in the next video.